Ferrari left Suzuka with something more valuable than a trophy. They left with answers. 7 races into the season, and the team finally saw exactly where their car loses pace to Mercedes. The telemetry from Japan revealed the bleeding point. Lewis Hamilton finished 4th, but his post-race words hit harder than his position. He told the press what drivers almost never admit. He said he was down on power. He said the cars around him had more strength on the straights. That confession opened a door Ferrari needed to walk through. The data tells a different story than the final classification. Hamilton's long-run average was 3/10 slower than Mercedes on straight sections across 15 laps. Frederick Vasseur confirmed what the numbers showed. He said once Ferrari falls out of the 1-second overtake window, they lose their advantage immediately. This is not a tire problem. This is not a driver problem. This is a power unit problem hiding in plain sight. Ferrari now has a measurable target instead of guesswork. What no broadcast covered is this. The weakness Hamilton exposed connects directly to regulations allowing Ferrari to request power unit upgrades mid-season. The ADU rules exist for this exact situation. A team can prove a deficit and receive permission to close it, but timing determines everything. The upgrade will not arrive before the next race. Ferrari must find gains somewhere else first. Software adjustments, energy deployment changes, setup trade-offs, and that is where this story gets complicated. Lewis Hamilton does not make public complaints about his car lightly. 7 world championships have taught him when to speak and when to stay quiet. His words after Suzuka carried the weight of someone who knows exactly what he is measuring. He said he was managing energy exactly as the team asked. He said he was full gas where engineers told him to be full gas. And still the power was not there. This is not a driver searching for excuses. This is a driver delivering forensic feedback to his team. When Hamilton speaks this directly about power deficit, the garage listens. The psychological significance goes deeper than most viewers realize. During his Mercedes years, Hamilton rarely blamed the power unit publicly. He absorbed pressure and deflected questions about car weaknesses. His admission at Ferrari signals something different. It signals confidence that the team will actually act on the information. Vasseur stood beside him and did not contradict a single word. That silence from a team principal speaks louder than any technical briefing. It confirms the issue exists at the highest level of the organization. Hamilton's experience becomes a development tool Ferrari cannot buy from any supplier. This creates pressure on the powertrain division in Maranello that cannot be ignored. Modern F1 teams protect their engine specifications like state secrets. Public admissions about power deficits almost never happen. When one does occur, it means internal discussions have already reached a critical point. Hamilton's feedback loop accelerates problem identification in ways telemetry alone cannot match. He feels what the sensors record. He translates physical sensation into engineering language, and that translation saves weeks of development time. But if the driver did everything right and the system still failed, where exactly did the breakdown occur? Every Formula 1 car has an overtake mode that unlocks extra power for limited periods. The system activates when a driver is within 1 second of the car ahead. This rule exists to create racing opportunities and close gaps during battles. But Ferrari depends on this window more than any other team on the grid. Their baseline power outside the window sits significantly lower than Mercedes. Once that 1 second gap opens up, the extra power disappears and the disadvantage becomes visible. This is not theory. This is what the straight line speed traps recorded lap after lap. The numbers reveal a dependency ratio that explains Ferrari's race pace collapse. Engineers estimate 60 to 70% of Ferrari's straight-line performance ties directly to overtake mode activation. Mercedes retains approximately 40% more baseline power when outside that window. Over 53 laps at Suzuka, this difference compounds into positions lost. A small deficit in lap 12 becomes a 3-second gap by lap 30. Championship points slip away not through one dramatic moment, but through hundreds of small losses that add up. Vasseur's words about losing advantage immediately were not caution, they were admission. This creates a strategic problem that cannot be solved through driver skill alone. Every team operates within the same regulatory framework for energy deployment. And the difference lies in how much performance remains when the special modes are unavailable. Ferrari's car shows strong cornering numbers that match or exceed rivals in technical sectors, but those strengths cannot compensate for straight line vulnerability over full race distance. The car becomes two different machines depending on proximity to competitors, and that inconsistency is what separates title contenders from the rest of the field. So if the window creates this much dependency, what happens when Ferrari cannot control the gap? What the data actually shows tells a story no broadcast camera captured. Sector by sector degradation patterns emerge that do not match standard tire wear models. The power drop occurred even when rubber conditions should have remained stable. Well, engineers inside the garage were already correlating Hamilton's feedback with pre-race simulations before the checkered flag waved. This was not post-race analysis. This was real-time problem identification happening while the cars still ran. The pattern started before Hamilton's podium slip, and it traces back to lap 1. The number Ferrari did not publish was the one that mattered most. Straight-line speed traps recorded an estimated 18 to 22 horsepower deficit to Mercedes across the race distance. What no broadcast covered is this. Leclerc's third place required 15% more energy deployment than Hamilton's position would suggest. The correlation between energy management instructions and actual power delivery shows a gap exists. This data differs from Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, where the pattern appeared isolated. While in Japan, the weakness became consistent and measurable across both cars. This gives Ferrari something they have lacked all season, a development target instead of guesswork. When engineers can point to specific sectors and specific laps where power disappears, solutions become reachable. The telemetry does not lie. It shows exactly where the car loses ground and exactly how much. But raw data alone does not fix a power unit. Someone must interpret it and turn numbers into hardware changes. And that interpretation leads to a question about the second Ferrari driver whose result appeared positive but actually confirmed the same weakness. Charles Leclerc crossed the line in third place and stood on the podium in Japan. On the surface, this result looks like positive momentum for Ferrari. But his own words after the race tell a different story. Leclerc acknowledged the team extracted the maximum result available. He also made it clear they were not operating on equal terms with Mercedes. This honesty from a driver fighting for every position confirms the issue runs deeper than one bad race. The podium was context dependent, safety car timing and competitor issues aligned favorably for Ferrari that day. The distribution problem becomes clear when comparing both Ferrari drivers. Leclerc's cornering performance matched or exceeded rivals in technical sectors throughout the race. His sector 2 times showed the car can generate grip and rotation at championship level, but straight line efficiency told another story. Power is used differently across the lap compared to Mercedes. Leclerc maximized what the car gave him in corners while losing ground on every straight. This imbalance explains why Ferrari appears strong in some phases only to fade in others. What maximum extraction reveals is the car's current ceiling sits below championship winning pace. Both drivers now converge on the same technical conclusion through independent feedback. Hamilton spoke about power deficit directly in the press conference. Leclerc confirmed the gap through his post-race analysis. When two drivers with different styles report the same weakness, the problem cannot be driver specific. This internal understanding matters more than external speculation. Ferrari knows where they stand. They know where time is being lost. They have confirmation from both sides of the garage, but knowing the problem exists does not solve it. There is a regulatory pathway that could allow Ferrari to close this gap before the season ends. Formula 1 introduced performance balancing regulations for the 2026 season with a specific purpose. Teams can request power unit upgrades mid-season if they prove a measurable deficit to competitors. The ADU system exists to prevent one manufacturer from dominating through irreversible advantages. Ferrari now qualifies for this pathway based on the data collected in Japan, but the process requires FIA verification before any hardware changes receive approval. This is not automatic permission. Engineers must submit evidence that satisfies technical delegates. The development cycle reality creates a timeline Ferrari cannot accelerate. Testing, integration, and reliability checks take 6 to 8 weeks minimum from approval to track installation. This means any power unit upgrade arrives later in the season rather than immediately after the break. The horsepower recovery potential sits at 15 to 20 through approved modifications. Every point lost before the upgrade arrives affects championship mathematics permanently. Teams do not get to reclaim points once a season concludes. The risk extends beyond timing. Ferrari's historical weakness in powertrain reliability could complicate aggressive development paths. This regulatory lifeline gives Ferrari hope, but not immediate relief. The championship consequence thread runs through every race remaining on the calendar. Positions lost in Japan become harder to recover with each passing weekend. Mercedes holds the advantage while Ferrari waits for approval and development completion. The question shifts from whether Ferrari can close the gap to whether they can close it fast enough. Regulations provide the pathway. Execution determines whether the pathway leads to contention or consolation. But even with regulatory permission secured, Ferrari faces another challenge that does not require FIA approval or months of development work. Software adjustments offer Ferrari immediate gains without waiting for hardware changes. Energy deployment mapping can be refined between races through updated control algorithms. The team already possesses the data needed to identify inefficient power distribution patterns. Setup changes provide another avenue for quick improvement. Twice, aerodynamic configuration trade-offs can favor straight-line efficiency without destroying the car's cornering strength. These modifications do not require FIA approval or months of development work. They require decisions made in the right direction with precision execution. Vasseur noted the team is already reducing the performance gap over the first few races. The extended break between Japan and the next race provides more time than usual to implement and test changes. Hamilton's integration value accelerates this process significantly. His feedback loop with engineers creates a development cycle that moves faster than telemetry alone allows. The realistic target involves modest gains that alter race dynamics without requiring complete overhaul. Consistency becomes the goal rather than peak performance spikes. Making the car stable across varying conditions matters more than one fast lap in qualifying trim. These changes could arrive before the next race on the calendar, which means the competitive picture might shift sooner than most observers expect. Software updates load in hours, not weeks. Setup adjustments happen in the garage between sessions. The question is not whether Ferrari can implement these fixes. The question is whether the fixes generate enough performance to change race outcomes. Mercedes will not stand still while Ferrari develops. Both teams push forward simultaneously, and that development race determines whether Ferrari's clarity from Suzuka translates into points on the board or remains an interesting footnote in their season story. Suzuka was clarity, not comeback. But clarity enables comeback in ways raw speed never could. Ferrari now knows where they stand and where time disappears lap after lap. The three numbers from Japan tell the complete story. 18 to 22 horsepower deficit, 60 to 70% dependency on overtake mode activation, 6 to 8 weeks for approved upgrades to reach the track. These figures transform speculation into action. Understanding a problem and solving it remain two different challenges entirely. Championships are decided in that space between knowledge and execution. The realistic scenario plays out across the remaining races on the calendar. Ferrari retains cornering strength while improving straight-line efficiency through software and setup work. Modest gains alter race dynamics enough to defend positions that previously slipped away. Races that look like losses become opportunities for points recovery. The gap to Mercedes is real, but not insurmountable across multiple areas. None of those areas sit beyond improvement with focused development. The execution challenge determines whether Ferrari returns with changes that matter or changes that merely look good on paper. In Formula 1, the difference between knowing where you are losing and actually finding it back is where titles are won. Ferrari now knows. The question is whether they can find it before Mercedes decides the championship is already theirs. Every race remaining becomes a test of development speed against competitive pressure. The telemetry from Suzuka opened a door. Walking through it requires precision, timing, and flawless execution from every person in Maranello. The season is not over. But the margin for error has disappeared completely.